Hey guys, what's up? Hopefully this is all working. I think. Make sure the chat's working. Cool. How's it going, guys? Welcome to the bomb site. Having a bit of a rearrange with everything, so everything's just all over the place. But yeah, how are people doing? How are people doing? Got a few bits and pieces planned today. So if you've not watched before, but you're on Glasshammer, then, or if you're not on Glasshammer and you've not watched before, welcome. This is just a informal sit-down session, just chatting about hobby, Warhammer stuff, other games, talking about events and things that have either been or that are coming up, and just a general informal chat about all things tabletop, hobby related, etc. Usually I'll do some painting or some building of something that I'm working on, either commissions for Glasshammer or for myself in the meantime. But so yeah, feel free to jump in the chat, ask questions, start conversations up, whatever you want to do, or just sit and listen for the next hour, 90 minutes, something like that will do. And just see where it takes us. Just making sure that the chat's up and everything, it's all working. So so you can catch this, guys, every Sunday, providing there's no event on or any of our other shows and that for Glasshammer. Every Sunday, usually between 7 and 7:30, we'll go live, and like I say, just chat about different bits and pieces. And I've got a few things I want to talk about today. Some that are, well, a few that are non-Warhammer related, but still tabletop and gaming related. So just thought I'd have a chat about those, see if people have got any opinions or thoughts on those, and so we'll jump straight into it. Whilst we're doing that, I'm just going to get a box of models that I'm going to build whilst we're doing this, and if anyone's interested, I am building a Necromunda Delac gang for a commission. So building these guys up. I've already built half the box, but what better time to finish the rest off than now? I can find the bases. So just lay those out. I'll find where I was at. I can't remember which ones I've actually done. Where are we? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're down to this guy. Cool. So first thing that I was going to talk about today, well, if people don't know, the I think it was the 8 Nations, was it today, the 40k team tournament, and Glasshammer's very own Manny Chima was playing for England, and I believe England won. So congrats to those guys doing that. I think they've finished not that long ago. So if you hadn't caught the news, then congrats to those guys. But yeah, I thought I'd kick off today talking about something that's coming up. Well, two things that are coming up in the next couple of weeks, and that is Warhammer Fest and the UK Games Expo. So I think Warhammer Fest is first. I think that's maybe next week, something like that, I think. And that's, for anyone that doesn't know, basically a huge convention based solely on GW products and all the GW range, and the you know, like they've got Black Library there, Forge World there, pretty much everything from their range is there, and it's I believe a 2-day thing, could be 3. Yeah, so you can see all the stuff out on display. They have like display tables out, and they do like seminars and all that kind of thing. I believe they've got events this year. I haven't really looked, to be honest, too much at the event itself, but I just know that it's coming up, because unfortunately I'm not able to attend it this year, and I haven't been to it since it was a Warhammer Fest. So I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have been or are going to it, but I haven't been to it since it's been a Warhammer Fest, and it's every year it comes round, and I think about going, and then never actually get round to doing it, which is more often than not the reason of our second part of topic, which is the UK Games Expo, is usually the culprit and reason why I don't end up going to Warhammer Fest. Although saying that though, you know, it's I'd love to go to see things like the announcements for new releases and all that kind of stuff. That's usually the part that I keep track of over the weekend, you know, for what's going on. So that's usually pretty good. So so that's coming up in the next couple of weeks, and then after that is the UK Games Expo. Now, with the UK Games Expo, if you've never been, then I wholeheartedly 100% recommend it. It is absolutely superb. If you're just into tabletop gaming, board games, anything like that in general, or if you're into cosplaying and all that kind of stuff, there is something for everyone. Tournaments, events, seminars, meet and greets with people, all sorts of stuff. It is, I think, one of the best, and certainly has grown into one of the best tabletop events of the year. Sorry guys. Yeah, so I definitely think it's one of the best events of the year. So, and that's usually why, like I said, that I don't tend to be able to get to things like Warhammer Fest, because I've normally committed to playing, either playing in an event near the time or going to the UK Games Expo. So I was thinking, like, for this year, they've Games Workshop, this is I think the second one that Games Workshop have been to. Last year was their first one. Whether they'd ever done one in the past, I'm not sure. I don't think so. But since like their new community boost and everything, they now go to the UK Games Expo, and you know, as you would expect, they've got some Forge World there. They've got, you know, pretty much all their products there, and then they've got some demo boards, so you can try Age of Sigmar 40k. You can try like things like Titanicus and Blood Bowl and that kind of thing. They tend to have out. So like that's kind of cool as well, because I find that like I've played Necromunda, I've played Kill Team, but a lot of their other games, I've played Blood Bowl, but a lot of their other games, things like Titanicus, and if they've ever brought out some of their things like Silver Tower and stuff like that, I've either bought them and just not played them. I've bought them for the models, or I've bought them and still not had a chance to play them, or never even bought them and played them. So I think that's like, that part of it's quite cool. I reckon this year they'll have the new Warcry game, the sort of skirmish I won't even say Age of Sigmar, because currently the models and units and army types that are in there aren't in Age of Sigmar. So like the fantasy style like skirmish type game. I reckon they'll maybe show that off, because I think that's due to drop pretty soon. And I think they'll probably reveal some more stuff at Warhammer Fest. And if they show it at Warhammer Fest, they'll likely take it to the Games Expo, because it is a game that Games Workshop can promote there as being, you know, in line with the other types of games that you see, because you typically will tend to see it is board game heavy. The Games Expo, it is 95% of it is board game stuff. So it's something that they could plug, you know, rather than just things like 40k and stuff. Because although those games, things like that, you know, like there's a lot of like Star Wars Legion for sale, things like X-Wing and all that kind of stuff, and Bolt Action. So there are other like tabletop war game stuff there, but everyone knows Games Workshop, and it's kind of, it's probably the least, you know, most people are like, I don't really want to go and see Games Workshop, because you've probably seen something that's coming out or you know what it's about. You tend to want to go and see other things, which is again another reason why I tend to go, because the rest of the year 99.9% of the commissions that I do are Games Workshop stuff. A very small amount of it is other things. That's probably because I don't really tend to promote too much other stuff. I tend to do Games Workshop because it's the most easily and readily available stuff for me to get my hands on, and for most people too. So when I go to the Games Expo, it's usually to see other games and other companies' miniatures and things like that, and usually end up coming away with 3 or 4 games or box sets of things, or certainly come away with models anyway, just to paint. So really looking forward to that this year. Just started in the process of saving for it, which I'd say this every year. I'm like, right, I'll save for 12 months to go to the expo. Never happens. It's always a last mad scramble over a month. Because like for someone like me, I mean, you can't see at the minute. I've just been rearranging my hobby room, and so trying to bring a lot of like the books and the other games and stuff that I've got back into one room, rather than it being spread about the house and stuff. And like, it doesn't matter what it is for me. If it's got models in it that look cool, I'll buy it. That's it. I'm sold. And I've got probably 5 or 6 games where I literally have just opened the game and gone, oh, that's the rulebook? Yeah, I don't care about that. Oh, that's the game tiles? Yeah, I don't care about that. Those are the models? That's what I want. So that's usually what tends to happen. And for someone like me who just loves miniatures in general, like you walk into it's all in the NEC now, or I think they do some stuff still in the Hilton in Birmingham. But the vast majority is in the NEC, and to just walk in and just see product everywhere, and there are so many cool things, and there's like little hidden gems hidden around. There's like some, you know, some sort of like just tables or like vendors and stuff that have just got bits and pieces that they're selling. You just like find little things, and little expansion boxes for a random game. It's just a few models in it, and it's like £5 or whatever. So it is really, really lethal for someone who is just into the miniatures. If you're into the games, then, you know, you're thinking, oh, okay, if it's 70, 80 quid plus per game, you probably, you know, you like to be a bit more limited. When you can turn up and go, oh, there's an individual model for like £3 or £4, you're like, oh, brilliant. And I just come home and I'm going, oh yeah, I totally forgot I even bought that. Oh yeah, I didn't even know I'd got that. So it is lethal. But the other reason I'm really excited for it this year is I don't actually have any games in mind to buy. So I'm completely open as far as what I could pick up. There's nothing that I go, right, okay, yeah, I definitely want this, this and this, which usually is the case. So it's literally a case of whatever I like at the time, which I love doing that, and which has kind of been what's been happening at the minute with me, wargaming wise, with still playing Age of Sigmar not really touched 40k still, and that's what's been happening recently. Is I'm just thinking, do you know what? I just quite like those models, or I quite like that for the army, so I'll just add those in, rather than constantly sitting down and going, what's my list? What am I almost being forced to buy? I mean, you know, like I wonder how much other people find that. You know, whether you are always there going, right, this is my list, this is what I get, or whether you just let it be quite fluid and just go, oh, okay, you know, this is, I just like this model, I'll add this into the army or something, or I'll start with this. Because majority of the time is when I tend to see it is people have gone, right, okay, I want to start doing this army, and then it either comes down to what's the most cost efficient way to start it to get a load of models, or this is a list that I want to build it around, whether that's a competitive list or just an idea that you've got to build. It's usually that I end up seeing people doing, or they'll just go, well, you know, for £100 I could get 2 start collecting boxes with a bit of discount and some extra, you know, maybe an extra unit or something, and then go from there. So, like, I'm always stuck in that regimented, this is what I'm going to start, so this is what I need, or this is what I'm going to get. And I like it when I can just go somewhere and go, this model or this game or this thing, I just like it for what it is. I don't care about its context in the game or in the setting it's supposed to be in. I just like it for what it is. Go. Because I find Games Workshop is quite expensive to do that with. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of other games that are way more expensive. I mean, I've started collecting some of the models from a game called Kingdom Death that came out, I want to say about 2015, I think, maybe. And it was one of the like really popular Kickstarters. You know, got mega funded, and the miniatures are really dark, and the not the universe, but like the setting it's in is a really cool, like immersive, dark thing. And then, but Kingdom Death pretty much only ended up being the Kickstarter. I don't even know if they did a retail run of it. So now to buy, I think, the whole game, or the base game and things, like you tend to see it on like eBay and stuff like that for like £400, because you can't get it, but the models in it again are amazing, and a lot of the monsters and stuff and the bosses are big. I mean, for example, 2 years ago, bought the Dark Souls board game. So, as an example, if I've got a model here, so things like you've got like a Primaris Marine, and that's the size of one of the boss miniatures from the Dark Souls game. So it's a little bit bigger probably than a Demon Prince. I mean, you know, a Demon Prince is roughly the same sort of size as that would be, and that is like a 60mm base, I think. Pretty much, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe an 80mm base. But the sort of scale of it is slightly larger, and the feel of it is slightly larger because it's a little bit more true scale to the 28mm. Whereas obviously 40k isn't really true to any kind of scale for itself, it's just the heroic scale. So having you know, like, so the Kingdom Death models are that size and bigger, and some of them are way bigger. So like you can buy those individually, you know, again, people on eBay and that's selling them and things, and they tend to be £60-70 plus. So you're talking like Games Workshop scale. Some of them have to be constructed nowhere near to the level of GW stuff, and they are like a resin. It's not quite the same resin as Forge World. Arguably it's actually a bit better, so I don't mind when it costs a bit more when you know you're getting that really good quality stuff. Like, there is zero flash on it. It's amazing. But of course, then buying them, because you're buying them out of a game, you're getting all the cards and things and the components that would be part of that base game. So you have to get all the bits for it. So you're paying, part of the money you're paying is for that. So advantage and disadvantage versus say GW is GW you can go, I can buy my box of models, I can get my sprue, whatever of a model. And okay, there's rules obviously printed onto the instructions, but you don't have to worry about the extras. If you want the extras, you buy them separate. So the downside to buying miniatures and things from other games and stuff to use tends to be that you're buying. A prime example is the Shadespire Underworlds game, the Age of Sigmar skirmish style like tabletop board game. That's why they've started releasing the miniatures away from the main set, because you can buy the warbands, but they come with all the cards and the extras. And people were saying, well, I don't really want all this. It's just extra stuff that I am literally just going to bin because I don't play the game. So they've started to do them without all those bits. To save people just going, I'll chuck those away. But it, and it saves them printing it. So that's the only downside to things like buying miniatures from board games or buying miniatures from other types of games. Is in this instance, I've managed to pick up a couple of the Kingdom Death monsters without the cards, so they have been a little bit cheaper. But things like that, because I'm not worried about the context of the model, I am literally just going, the model looks cool, is it in budget? Yes, no, whatever, fine, I'll buy it. Or and I'll add it, I'll paint it and add it into my collection of stuff. But the thing is, I also hear a lot of people will go, yeah, well fine, I'll do that with things, and I won't really, like, they might buy a model for something randomly, but then they'll go, but if I'm not really going to play a game of something, then they're probably not likely to pick up the model and paint it just for painting's sake. It's usually, like, you hear a lot of people who play like 40k and Age of Sigmar and stuff like that, would, if they were probably honest, they wouldn't build and paint the models that they do anyway if it wasn't for the gaming factor of it. And I've a lot of people I've spoken to, it's surprising the large amount of people that don't really care about the hobby side of it, that aren't really interested in the painting and building bit. So they're less likely to say, well, yeah, here's an alternative company then. It's a game I don't know or whatever, or a miniature I don't even know. Oh, it's like 80 quid. Well, or I could pay £80 for something that's from a game that I play. And I get that, I do get that. I understand why. I do understand why. Sorry guys, just seems somebody has purchased something off my PlayStation. Or maybe not. Oh, okay. Sorry, just thought someone was buying something on my stuff, on my PlayStation account. Alan Hancocks, what's up, mate? How's it going? Painted that Star Drake yet? Yeah, so I understand why people won't necessarily buy miniatures. In fact, Alan, you are the prime example for this. Just talking about the Games Expo, the UK Games Expo coming up, and buying miniatures and things for just random games. Because I've just been saying about how I'm actually looking forward to going this time with nothing in mind, so I can just openly buy things, models and stuff that I just like the look of, just because I like the look of them. And I mean, you're just about to buy models for our D&D campaign, so you'll sort of get this. And I'm just saying about how people can be a bit put off to venture into other games and even look at miniatures and stuff, because they're thinking, well, if I'm going to sink 30 or 40 quid into that model, am I really going to do that when I could spend 30 or 40 pound to for a game that you play? And like I was saying, I understand entirely why a lot of people do that, but I then find that it leaves you quite introverted in like what's actually out there. And I think companies like Games Workshop and stuff sort of end up putting that blanket on everything, and you're sort of assuming this is what is out there, which is kind of why I wanted to do these sit down Sunday sessions, to sort of break that up a little bit and talk about other games and other miniatures and other things that are out there, and have a look at some of those rather than solely just the constant GW stuff. Alan, only 795 scales to go. Lovely looking models out there, and for next to nothing. Yeah, well, that is the other thing. I mean, the thing for me is as well, so the flip side for me with this is, so on one side of the argument is people will go, well, I play this game, so I'm likely not going to venture too far away from that game whilst I'm playing it and just buy a model for a model's sake or another project to work on. And I'm talking now from a hobbyist's perspective, someone's perspective who's just into gaming, or who's just into miniatures, into painting, just as something, like sort of the old Airfix days of, I'm bored on a Sunday, what do I do? Oh, I've got a random model here that I could just sit and paint for an hour or whatever, just to break up the time. I'm talking about that group of people, not people that are just focusing on, I want a game to play, this is it. So I am picking on a certain portion of people. But so one side of the coin is, this is the game I play, so this is usually what my money's going to go on, and I'm not going to stray too far away from that. But then on the flip side, I find that it's that then people go, okay, you're going to spend say 30, 35 pound on maybe like those 5 models for a Games Workshop game, but then the game changes so quick. So the FAQs come out, for example, the Warhammer 40k FAQs just come out, which inevitably will change what people's list ideas are, what people tend to take. And again, you could argue that will only affect a certain amount of people, like competitive or tournament goers and things like that. Yeah, fine. People who just play casually won't care less. They'll just see the FAQ and go, those are the rules changes, whatever. They might have to adjust their list for points and things, but that's just that. But with a lot of other things, it's like the game doesn't change. So when I buy the model, that's what it is. Or I can utilize it for something else, etc., etc. So you've got that thing of, you might feel sometimes that you're spending, like that you're buying sort of the right amount of stuff for what you need without too much wastage. So if you go, this is my army list, it will cost me £250. There I go and buy it. There we go. There's my army. But guaranteed over a 12-month period, that's not what you'll stick with. For example, for me. And another good example is the Dark Souls game, which is just one of many examples of this type of game. You can buy the core game, then you can buy expansions. You can buy expansions that are single miniatures, you can buy expansions that are multiple miniatures. But I have literally found no need at the minute, or not really any reason, to actually purchase those bits. And obviously they're designed to just be add-ons. They're not crucial to the game, which is, yes, a major change, but you could argue, units are your choice in things like 40k and Sigmar and stuff. They're not, if you like, the core of the game. You've got to have your army, yeah, but that can change. So you don't have to have that £80 model. You don't have to have that £100 model in the army. You can make it so that you don't have those kinds of things, which is great. That's what that's about. And the same goes for that. You can go out and you can buy a game, or a different type of game, a board game or a standalone game, and they have the options there. But I've found I don't really need to go and buy it. So I find that actually those types of things are a lot more cost effective than, say, some of the tabletop options, because there isn't that constant search for change and things. Alan, Mantic models do loads of elves, dwarves, undead, which between your mates you could use proxy models to give your army some individuality. Yeah, well that's another huge point about stuff like this. I used to go to things like the Games Expo and other things for alternative miniatures, and I would probably go, like, in anyone else's eyes, if I was like, I wanted a different kind of demon prince, he would be my demon prince, and I would say this is my demon prince. Of late though, I've got out of that habit, and I've actually like converted less models, and I've searched less and less for bits and all that kind of thing, mainly due to the fact that a lot of things that I've ended up playing in are GW events, so of course it's got to be GW stuff. So it's not allowed for any room for me to move into other miniatures and other games, which I think is why I'm actually looking forward to just being able to go buy anything, get anything, doesn't matter, it's not tied down to one thing. Which moves on to my next thing, like, about this and the whole thing of what I'm looking forward to is, like, I'm totally reinvigorating my love for RPG games at the minute. I mean, at times it even crosses my mind to go, why are you even bothering with like tabletop war game style stuff? RPG is what I absolutely love. It's why I ended up buying models, and I think even as a kid, when I had bits and pieces of models from 40k and random things, I would actually be more interested in taking those models and making some other thing out of it, making another game up, or designing my own rules, or coming up with my own bits and pieces for it, than just saying, this are the 40k rules, or this is the rules for the game this came from. I've always been more interested in that kind of thing, and like creating worlds and creating characters and like names for things and campaigns and narrative stuff and all that kind of thing. That's really what I've been into with it. And of late, like a local group of us have started playing a D&D, like a D&D style session, like RPG session again, and like I absolutely love it. It's homebrew. I've got homebrew rules. I've done all the all the map creation stuff and all this kind of thing, and I absolutely love it. It's the the main thing that I really like about tabletop games and the miniatures and stuff. Which I think is why, out of the two games between Age of Sigmar and 40k, why I've ended up not really getting back into 40k, because I just feel that the narrative isn't there to the extent of Age of Sigmar. I think I said this to someone the other day, that between the two, I understand that 40k has changed a lot as a game, and it has changed a lot as a game from 7th edition to now, and I understand there is a lot of units that they had to make rules for again and change, and they've got all the codexes to do, and then are the rules going to work, and new rule book and all this kind of stuff. So I understand that, but in a comparison to Age of Sigmar, where they basically killed the world, they just went, here's the universe and everything you know about this game, that's now gone, it's now this instead. Completely different. Okay, there's a few crossovers as far as, all the main units crossover, but like, they killed characters. I mean, you want to talk with 40k where, where's like Asdrubale Vecht and people like that, you want to go, this was like a Thanos snap for the fantasy stuff. It's just, they're all gone. And it took a lot of things like that out of the game, but I feel that Age of Sigmar, they've built a lot more narrative around that. Now, whether that's because they've made a blank canvas so they can go rewrite what you want. 40k, they're obviously still trying to stick with what's going on, and they can't accelerate too far. But I always think that they've just sat still way too much on the story for 40k. that they haven't progressed it every 12 to 18 months, just a new little bit of narrative, a new little bit of narrative. You get the odd thing with some campaigns, and you know they've been doing more this time around with things like Vigilus and all that kind of thing. But I think that's why it, for me, as an, you know, this is for me as a someone who is in this for the hobby, really, not so much the gaming, that I've struggled to progress with it because it doesn't provide me with that narrative and that story and things like that. So for me, 40k has become more of the game. It's become more, this is the game that you play, whereas something like Sigmar or other games, for example, you can go, yeah, this is the game, but we could make this up about it, or we could make that up about it. Now, of course, you could do that with 40k. You could make up stories, you could make up campaigns, you could do your own rules and things if you wanted to add bits and pieces in. But I'm sort of talking more from as it comes out of the like manufacturer, if you like. When it comes from HQ, it's coming into the community as X, whereas something else is coming out as Y. And like I say, for me, it just seems to be a lot more thought and stuff go into it. Who knows, the next round of codexes, when they do the codexes again, they might now start to add a bit more narrative and embellishment and all that kind of thing into the books, which I hope they do, because then that would get me back on board with that again. But that's why I think I've ended up really getting back into the thought of things like the RPG games, because I can buy whatever I want and I can add it in, and I can play with it. There's no rule on, oh, you can't use that model, or no, you can't do this. But also, it's, I just find that it's so much more immersive, because you're playing the game. It's much easier to just play the game for how it's being created or what's being done. Whereas, like I said, I think things like 40k, it just feels to be like, oh, you have to play the game as the game is moving with the community of players rather than your player base. I mean, I could just be totally off, and it could just be, well, you can, yes, you can play it exactly how you want. There's no stipulation to say you have to play it at a mega competitive level and things like that. But like I said, just to me, that's how it sort of comes across a bit. So anyway, going back to the original point of with it being the Games Expo, because I'm not hating on 40k. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to being able to go there and just browse stuff. I am supposed to be playing in the Age of Sigmar tournament, which currently looks a bit shady to whether it's even going ahead, because Games Workshop have now this year started doing their own tournaments. As of previous years, people did used to run, I think Leon Smith used to run the 40k tournament there, and then that stopped. I don't know if anyone else has done an independent Age of Sigmar one, but they have lots of tournaments and events for loads of different games. Dystopian Wars. They have. They did have things like Netrunner Championships. I think this year they've got the Age of Sigmar Champions card game. I think there's a big event for that where they're pulling from the like a big prize fund. They're doing like a competitive tour, and there's a big prize fund, like several £1,000s of a prize fund in that. So that's, but again, you see that's being picked up from an outside thing, just buying into the GWIP. But yeah, so there's things like that are going on. So yeah, I could well be playing in that, but hopefully not now, maybe. And I can just take in the expo as it is, and and just see new games. The best thing as well is that you can go and you can demo games, which is something I think that is usually what will get people into playing stuff. I mean, like our local gaming group and stuff, I feel maybe we don't demo games as often as we could, and we should probably maybe put on some like games days where you just go, here's a load of games we've got, we'll set them up, and if you want to come around and play them, you can come around and play them. Because that's where I think you really see you know, what is out there, the scope of games that are out there. And like I say, that's when you'll see models and think, oh yeah, actually that's really cool. You'll see other people's paint schemes for things and go, oh yeah, that's really cool, that's a good idea. You know, I really like the whole bouncing ideas off everyone, and the more stuff you can see, then the more inspiration you're going to get as either a painter or a gamer or someone who just, you know, who converts models, or even maybe someone who's like a sculptor and stuff like that. The more you see stuff, it's just going to give you so much more information to work with to create something. Evening Bug Manor 1983 joining us on Twitch. How's it going? So yeah, I think, you know, it gives you loads of scope. So really looking forward to the Games Expo this year, and I'll probably end up posting up some things on Glasshammer, maybe if they show some releases and stuff for GW or some new models and things like that. You know, I'll post up on there and see how that's going, and maybe check in the 40k tournament and see what's going on in the tournament hall there with players, and what sort of lists and things like that people are bringing. So yeah, so that's coming up. I can't think of if there's anything else that's coming up event wise, like on that scale. I know that Warhammer World have got a lot of events. Just take a look on there. They've usually got a hell of a lot of events coming up. On there. Okay, the website's been a bit dodgy, but yeah. So Warhammer World, load of events. I think pretty much now throughout the summer there's always an event on at a weekend for something there. So plenty of things going on there. So going back to the like board game stuff and alternative games and things. So recently, which is a question for people watching, how many of you have ever like indulged in things like Kickstarter? Because I've always watched Kickstarters, I've always seen really cool Kickstarters and always know what it's about, and there's been so many things where I've gone, probably should have done that, and always at the time thought, again, on the going back to the discussion about like price of things and that, like always thought, do I, don't I, you know, is it too much to drop in one go, or things like that, and I've always regretted it not doing it. So this time round, one of my all-time favourite games has come out on Kickstarter, which is Bloodborne. So Bloodborne on the PS4, and they're bringing out the like a tabletop miniatures game for it, and it is by far, like the Dark Souls series and Bloodborne is by far one of, it's just my favourite thing. Just real dark, super over the top enemies and bosses and monsters and things. It's just that's what I love. Just crazy over the top powerful monsters, and you just got to wade your way through them. So anyway, they are now, with Cool Mini or Not, they are doing the board game for it, which has got a ruck of cool models, of course, all throughout the game, the ones that are featured in the game. So I thought, right, definitely for this, I'll back it. So did the main pledge, which I think is worked out about £70, something like that. It's about $90 something. And obviously then you're getting all the stretch goal stuff with it as well. And like even up to now, I think there's about 10 days left, and there is a ruck of stuff that's been unlocked with it. And now I often wonder at times whether even GW could do some stuff like with Kickstarter. Like if they wanted to like do other lines of miniatures. Like for example, like Tomb Kings. So I always thought this, where Tomb Kings, they just cut them out. They were like, okay, basically they're not selling, you know, so we're going to stop the range. But then I often wonder whether doing, like, they do their things like back for so long, you know, like they'll do last chance to buy and all those kinds of things. But I wonder whether, like, they could even do something like a sort of Kickstarter thing where they're going, okay, well, if you want to test whether the army or anything will actually be purchased, then do, you know, like if they wanted to do, say, like they did Deepkin, which was the last, one of the last, like new armies, then like they could test the water by going, okay, if you do this, you'll get this. And I've always wondered whether it would be something that Games Workshop could do with their kind of game, or to the way they could like release extra stuff or more stuff, and with it being funded, like crowdfunded. And a company like them, you know, like we would have complete faith and trust in the fact they would get them made and designed and finished and stuff like that. But it's always been a discussion I've wanted to have with people over, I wonder whether companies like that could now go into that, or whether their schedule's done way too far in advance that they could even, you know, that they could even do it. Because I wonder whether their scheduling, like GW scheduling, is what like completely blows the meta up with games, because they will, like, so the Inari rules, I think they're in this month's White Dwarf. I haven't picked it up yet, but like, of course, they, like, their rules and stuff have changed, and obviously the FAQ has changed things. But the idea for those rules changes came ages ago, and I mean, some releases and things are like over 12 months in advance when they plan a book or something to come out. Now, I don't know how far in advance. It's definitely a few months in advance when they obviously have to finalise stuff to get it ready to go to print, to go for distribution, because of course we look at it as our local area, but of course they've got to go for worldwide distribution. This is a brand new product. So I think like they are so far in advance for their scheduling that is maybe that's maybe why things get so messed up with the meta a bit, because they obviously they're not able to just change things like that, because of obviously getting it out to everybody. I know that things like FAQs, and they could do things like, you know, PDF downloads and all that kind of stuff. You know, they could do all those kinds of things to get info out there. But I think that's why there tends to be these huge shifts in the meta, and why things seemingly get overlooked. To which actually that brings on another topic in a second that I want to talk about. So, like, I wonder whether their scheduling messes with their ability to even do things like that because of how far in advance they have to release them. I'm not sure. I've got a load of messages. So, Bugman 1983, do you play in a 40k Grand next weekend? No, I'm not playing in the 40k Grand tournament next weekend, unfortunately. I haven't played 40k competitively or otherwise for quite a few months, actually. I've still got my Death Guard stuff to finish off, but yeah, it'd have to be some slightly lesser tournaments, I think, before that. They're going to release something, I hope it's new Xeno special detachment like Vigilus. Yeah, see, like, and so that is a good point, to be fair, which I think is maybe another reason as to why I haven't been as keen with 40k as much, is I think now it's to do with the races. Like, Xenos is not just Eldar. Like, give me something else than just pointy-eared space elves. Like, give the other armies, Xenos armies, like, something. Like, and the thing is, they've created so many new armies and things for Age of Sigmar. Like, for example, so they rebranded and brought out new units for the sisters, not the sisters, the Daughters of Cain. Okay, so you've got the Daughters of Cain, equivalent Sisters of Battle, let's say. I know they're dark, like they're basically like Dark Eldar because they're dark elves, but Sisters of Battle, 40k, female army. That's what you've got through the Daughters of Khaine. They release some new units, use some existing lines, done. The Idoneth Deepkin, okay, they're more elves, but although they're order, like, they're not nice. And the Daughters of Khaine are order, so they're the good guys. But again, they're certainly not. It's just what they're fighting for is fighting for order. Now, I wonder whether that would be a better system as well for 40k, not just having Imperium, because like the Inquisition, yeah, they're Imperium, but like the Inquisition are not good by any stretch of the imagination. So it's like having something where you could fight for order or disorder or chaos, things like that. You could have other armies that could fit under chaos. They could bring out new armies that fit under the chaos bracket, but they're not Chaos Space Marines, they're not demons, but they're fighting to create chaos, to destroy things and all that kind of thing. And that's maybe what I'd like to see a bit more out of 40k, is not just Imperium, Chaos, Xenos. Like, because the Imperium gets so much love, whereas in other games it's like they really don't. They still kind of put them on the back foot a bit and go, you're going to have to fight. You know, it's things like Chaos get the really cool demons and the big monsters and stuff. Although like in Age of Sigmar, with it being fantasy, they've got a lot more creatures and stuff. But there's creatures in the 40k universe. They need more organic miniatures for 40k, not just armor. You know, there are creatures still alive in 40k. They need more things like that. So yeah, like another Xeno special detachment like Vigilus, Bug Manor would be, would be cool. Something actually for them. Alan, 18th and 19th is the AOS Team Championship at Warhammer World. Is that this month? Have they got an AOS Team Championship this month? I know there's two. Maybe it was this month because we were talking about going and then didn't go. Oh no, it can't be because the 15th, 16th of June is the Bug Manor again. There's some nice models from Bloodborne. Yeah, and I mean the thing is with it is, and this is the thing that I like about seeing all these other games, is GW has a really cool IP. GW has a really cool universe. But man, there are some companies out there that just absolutely blow them out of the water for like their ideas. It's just like Bloodborne, for example. You couldn't have like a war game out of it. It just wouldn't work right. You have to have it as kind of an RPG style board tiled game. You know, it can't work on a... Which is why I love the idea of Legion. I just think that Star Wars Legion, it's just the factions. There isn't the expansion for the factions and things like that. If they did something like Clone Wars, then you could have big, full-scale wars and stuff. But yeah, there's definitely cool models in the Bloodborne game. Alan again, Throne of Skulls, 8th and 9th of June, the doubles, and then the 15th, 16th of June, 40k Grand Tournament. Yeah, see, I think it's definitely things like that I'd have to go for again for 40k. I'd have to either probably play a doubles. I really enjoyed the 40k doubles I did a couple of years ago. So, you know, I'd be really, really keen to do that again, maybe to get and play it. So, what was my other point I was going to make? There was a point I was going to make about something. Ah, yeah, okay. I will wet the palate before talking about this. So what I want to tie this into is, with doing the RPG stuff that I'm doing at the minute and that I've done in the past, over the past couple of years, I've been sort of in the background writing a couple of RPG style games, making some rules for them, things like that. Past six to 8 months, been on the back burner a bit, but starting to get a bit more time now to actually start doing it again. So, basic idea is just to write an RPG style game that's got some new things with it and that kind of uses rules and ideas and systems from different style games and sort of melding them into one. And then maybe when it works together, actually putting out like a free PDF, people could download it and just, could play. So, and I'm doing a sci-fi style one and a fantasy style one. Now, for these games, I'm writing a player's book, a companion book that has like all the extras bits in it, so info on the world and all that kind of stuff, and a DM or like game master's book that has the rules in it, if you like. So there's the player's book that can give you the information on how you're going to make your character. Oh, YouTube interrupting there. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, so the player's book will be about your character, creating your character, how you use your character, all that kind of thing, and your basic player rules for them to know. Then there's the companion, which will have the information about the world, about what's going on, and all the things, that you can add in, optionally, and ideas to help players create their characters, that kind of stuff. And the GM's book will have the extensive rule sets in it, so they can say, yes, this is how the rules work for this, or not. And the information for the GM to run the game. Now, I wanted to keep it to the GM book having the rules for the game, predominantly so that if you wanted to tweak things to fit a scenario or situation, you could. You don't want players necessarily going, well, in this setting, like things like D&D, going, well, I don't like it when in RPG style games and role-playing games and things that you can just go, but the rules state this. Because it's like, but it's supposed to be a free, open style thing that a circumstance might actually be better if this happened instead. It might be more dramatic or thematic if this happened instead of this, and that kind of thing. So I want it to be that it's the GM's book that has the rules in it, and that's where the discretion of the rules comes in. Now, so I'm writing rules and things like that for this, and it's what's got me thinking recently with the 40k FAQ. Is people's, which is I think kind of why I'm leaning more towards things like the RPG games and board games and stuff again a bit more than the tabletop games, is the community around certain games weigh or feel the need to interpret the rules how they want to interpret the rules. And I just want to know how much it's come up with people, like, if you've played games and people are trying to interpret the rules and stuff. And, it really bugs me at the minute. Seeing people post online, well, you could read, it's written this way, it's written that way, you could read it this way, you could read it that way. What I don't understand is, I always understand that when people write extensive rules for something, there is bound to be something they overlook. And there's bound to be something with the lengths of something like Games Workshop games where you've got the rule books, you've got the expansion books, you've got all the codexes. You're bound to forget, that rule integrating with this rule, when they merge together, it makes for a really weird thing to happen. And my examples for this is things like Games Workshop games. Magic the Gathering is one. And then basically all of the games that don't seem to fit into those two. So I find that Games Workshop games, we all know that Games Workshop is hobby first, the competition tournament things second, and that's revealed in how good their miniatures are and how crap their rules tend to be. Their Alan redeploy units, for example. Yeah, that example of, well, it's saying, redeploy, and this, so when I redeploy, this happens, so can I put models back in? And I was watching, actually, funnily enough, if you haven't seen it, Manny and Dan do a full review on the 40k FAQ, which is great, because I haven't played it for ages, and listening through that was really cool to listen to the changes, that meaningful changes. And a lot of things are coming up at the minute with 40k, with, stratagems, this unit may do this as if it was this phase. And I don't understand why people have trouble understanding that rule. If you have a phase of the game that says, in the shooting phase, this is how you perform a shooting attack. Now, if it then says somewhere else, you may shoot as if it was the shooting phase, now you follow the rules for how to shoot in the shooting phase, but you still have to remember you are not in the shooting phase. You just perform the ability as if you were in that phase, i.e. it's just saying, rather than saying, okay, this lets you shoot in the combat phase, or this lets you shoot in the charge phase, which is basic, Overwatch for 40k, for example, is you get to make a shooting attack in the charge phase with the following exceptions, which maybe is how it should be written, of this is how you perform this attack, this is how you perform this ability. And with the stratagems, I'm surprised that it wasn't written as, like you see in board games, you have cards for all your things. I'm surprised it wasn't done as, this ability allows you to do this. So it just sets it out. But I don't understand how people are struggling. And the one thing I think is why people are struggling is because they're attempting to interpret the rules in a different way than they're intended. Because they're going, well, you could read it like this, or, and it's been this age-long thing of rules as written versus rules as intended. Well, you have to play rules as written. You can't play rules as intended because you didn't write the rule set, so you can't say what the intention was. You can assume what the intention was based on how everything else works, but it's like in Age of Sigmar, they've changed a lot of abilities to be such and such happens if a unit is wholly within a certain range, not just within, because people can string units out and stuff like that. Now, that works in 40k where there's a lot more within rather than wholly within, but the auras and abilities tend to be shorter. Well, in my eyes, I would rather in 40k go things like they get +1 attack if they are wholly within 18 inches rather than saying if they're within 6. Because if you think about that, what that's allowing you to do is super exploit the character rule of not being able to target them, because you're going to keep those characters close to units to give them the ability if it's say 6 inches. But then it means because you're close to a unit, you're never going to probably be in front of that unit. So to me, it just completely overdoes the ability. Whereas if it was, you can do the ability if it's within say 24 inches. That means your opponent could keep the character way back hidden. Yeah, they could potentially keep them way back out of the way, which happens in Age of Sigmar. But the direct threat is not them then. The direct threat is the enemy that's in front of you. So you still focus on that enemy unit. The annoying thing is, you can like creep your unit up and go, I give them the buff or ability, move that unit up, but I still get to move that character up just that little bit. Now you could still do that if it had a bigger aura bubble. I understand you could still do that. But player mentality of things like that would change because you could do new things. Oh, well, if I keep him here, I can actually, that unit's in range. Or if I keep him in here, then that unit's in range and stuff. A bit of a different side to it, but I feel you should always hit and miss on a 6 and a 1. Yeah, so again, things like that, where they've changed it now in Age of Sigmar, where a 1 is always a miss and a 6 is always a hit now. Didn't used to be. It used to be you could take them off being able to hit at all. Certain abilities slide, but it also means that now things like they've said on an unmodified hit roll of a 6, this happens. Great. So it makes it really clear. But I don't understand how people are going, well, it says as if it were the shooting phase, so I'm going to shoot like the shooting phase. Well, no, you get to perform a shooting attack like the shooting phase, but you're not in the shooting phase, therefore all other rules, abilities and things don't count for that. Which is why they've said now in the FAQ, if a character charges you, but they're not the closest unit when they charge you, can you overwatch them? Yeah, because the rules for the shooting phase don't apply. The rules in the shooting phase state you cannot target a character, which is why things like psychic works, because if it's not a shooting attack, you can target a character because it's specific. The rule is cannot be targeted by like a shooting, or I don't know what the exact word it is, missile, ranged, whatever. But a shooting attack, you cannot target the character if it's 9 wounds or under, 10 wounds or under, if they're not the closest unit. That's a the shooting phase rule. But as far as for the charging, it's like, but that's not a shooting. We are shooting as if it was in the shooting phase, but you're not following all the rules for. Now you could you could argue, so why are we hitting on 6s? But that's the Overwatch rule, so that's explained then in itself. Which is why I think it would have been better for something like 40k to say, this is the type of attack you perform. Using words like as if it were this phase or that phase or refer to this phase, to me it's just they just don't want to write the rule out. Whereas they could just write the rule out and just clarify it. In the charge phase, units that are being charged may perform an attack if they have a ranged weapon. They can use that ranged weapon. As per its profile would be a better way. So then it means things like rapid fire and all that and heavy would all come into it. And just say, with the exception of the target hits on a 6+ rather than its normal ballistic skill. That would just clarify everything and make it really easy. No one would be going, am I in the shooting phase? Am I shooting as if it was the shooting phase? Can I then use this stratagem because I'm now... I mean, that was something else. People were going, I'm going to use this stratagem so I can do something as if it were this phase. But now because we're in this phase, I'm going to use this stratagem. I can't fathom how someone has actually even done that, because you're going, but you're not in that phase. You're doing that first thing as a reaction to your opponent doing such and such because they're in that phase. Like if they're in the charge phase, you are only getting to shoot them in Overwatch as a reaction to them charging, which they're only able to do because they're in the charge phase. You can't now say you're in a different phase. If that's the case, that unit can't even perform the charge. So it's why I'm kind of like with other games, it's just like rules are so much clearer. And I just feel that the community are not trying to break the game. They're trying to fix the game to go, this is how the rules work, or this is how the rules need to be written. I just find that at times it can just be, it's just exploitation of rules to suit what you feel it should be written as, which is mental, really. But you know, it's just how I know it's just how the game is, and you know, I know that although I'm saying I'm like planning on, you know, I'm writing these games and things, I don't claim to be anywhere near as good as rules writers for companies like Games Workshop and other, you know, other manufacturers and stuff. But I just feel that it's pretty easy to not leave any ambiguity in there. And I just think a lot of it does just come down to the community who's playing the game of why not just play the game as it is. And so my example for Magic the Gathering, anyone who's played or watched Magic the Gathering knows that Magic the Gathering has crazy combos in it, like, you know, 1-turn kills, and people moan about things like 40k and stuff where you used to be able to just get tabled in a turn and stuff. You know, we're talking, you set up, you've got your cards, you've got your deck, and someone can literally, in a hand, you're dead. You're just done. They pull off a combo and you don't even get a turn, you don't even get to consider anything, done. So it's far more brutal than anything that Games Workshop do, or any game like that. But I often wonder why Games Workshop, or other companies maybe, you know, I don't play their games too much, but other companies are afraid to have powerful things in it. We've had this discussion before with the comparison of Age of Sigmar versus 40k currently, in that I prefer it if something is a brutal unit or has brutal rules to it, because it's that scenario of if I run into that unit and I want to combat them, and I've got 200 attacks and I'm going to kill that unit. Great. Okay, you go, right, I know that this unit can kill that unit, that's where I want to try and charge, that's where I want to try and position, I need to kill that unit. If you're in a game where you're going tit for tat, I'm throwing dice, you're throwing dice, I'm throwing dice, you're throwing dice, and nothing's happening, that to me is, there's less of a point to that than there is actually having one army just, you know, annihilate another. Because it just means they're tailored better to beat that army. Now, saying that, I think the difference then between AOS and 40k ends up being that 40k tends to get too imbalanced, whereas AOS tends to be, there is codex creep in that the codex that comes out tends to be good, but it's the fact that, so, you know, it tends to be the new thing that comes out does tend to have quite a bit of power behind it, but that's not always true for Age of Sigmar. Like Gloomspite Gitz came out, didn't really change too much. Skaven came out, really good. Khorne have come out, not really changing the meta too much. Slanesh are coming out, could change things. So it doesn't always work with them for codex creep. But everything tends to level itself out because of mainly maybe how they do the missions. And yes, you don't have as much range stuff, but you have so much more mortal wounds in Age of Sigmar. You have so many more attacks and abilities that just go, you don't even get a save. Yeah, I don't hear people complain as much about that. But being shot at from range in 40k, people just seem to be like, ah, no, don't like that. It's overpowered, broken, rubbish. Alan, that takes the fun out of games for me, even if it is competitive. There still needs to be an enjoyable element to the tournament. What, you mean it takes the fun out of games if units just get wiped? Is that what you mean, Al? That if units are, even in Age of Sigmar, if a unit runs in and goes, here's 200 attacks, basically your unit is dead to maths. Is that what you mean? You don't like that, or you don't like it if it's back and forth, taking forever? Because I mean, again, like, yeah, so for a tournament, as an example, you know what you're getting into at a tournament, no matter what type of tournament it is. Although I do feel some tournaments should maybe be a bit better at pitching what their type of tournament is. If you are full on competitive and that's what it's about, and it is a competition, and I love competition. If it is that, then great, and as long as people know that's what it is, and I don't agree that, you know, you should moan if you've taken something that is fairly underpowered. Then it's like, well, you know, you had the choice to take it, or that was your army and you went to the tournament. That, you know, that's how the cookie crumbles, kind of thing. There's never always going to be a opportunity where it's always going to be a close game or a bit tit for tat and, you know, give a bit, take a bit kind of thing. It's never always going to work out like that because it's dice. It doesn't work like that. It does more if you find that, you know, both of you have got as equally, you know, good or capable an army. You've both equally capable got an army that's capable of doing just as much to each other. But no, I do prefer it if I know that it's like, okay, if I charge this unit, it's pretty much dead. Because I think that, or if I target that unit, I can kill it, say in 40k, for example. And the reason I say that is because you still have to think about where you position the unit. So if you know that unit's going to annihilate that unit and you want to get to it to kill it, you've still got to position it. You've still got to bait your opponent into putting that unit there for you to charge. You've still got to make the charge. You've still got to make the move. And so there's still the element of skill to the game of going, well, although I know my unit is going to kill it, I've got to, you know, I've still got to try and get my unit there, or I've still got to try and position my army there whilst taking into account the rest of the mission. You can't just go with one unit and run rampant. As an example to that is my Skaven army. I'm using at the minute lots of plague monks. They're incredibly good as far as they're incredibly efficient. I have played games though where they have just been annihilated because my opponent has picked them apart correctly or has made sure they found ways to stay away from them or do other things in the game that mitigate how good that unit is. But you know, the plague monks are very, very good. But the army isn't based around solely the plague monks. The plague monks are the ones that do the work. But I still need my vermin lords. I still need to know where my clan rats are going, because my clan rats are my weak unit, but they're the ones who are there going to hold the objectives. So I've got to actually do something with them. It's not just deploy and send the plague monks forward and away we go. It doesn't work. I have to still consider where my other heroes are that give them the buffs. You know, and this just transfers 40k. You've still got to consider where things are in relation to things. You can't just point and click them. So the army isn't just, oh well, it's got plague monks in it, off you go. Because like I said, I've played plenty of games with them where they've just gone, nah, okay, that unit's been killed off, or I've had to change plan or whatever. So I think having units and armies that can just go, in this round, I'm probably going to kill this, or I'm probably going to kill this, and that's that, and then I wait to see what they do. I love that because I just think, right, it's not certain, but the odds are in your favour, which ultimately is what you're trying to do. You are trying to create an army list, and you're trying to create buffs and synergies, or well, you probably should be, to give yourself the best chance. To stack the odds in your favour. We know it's a dice game, but you can manipulate the odds of the dice work in your favour. Bonuses to hit, minuses for your opponent to hit you. You know, all that kind of thing. You can work it to be in your favour or not. But you still have to roll those dice, and you still have to try and roll them at the correct times. You just have to try and activate your units at the right time. I think 40k would work really well if it had the same roll for priority system as Age of Sigmar, and I don't care what anyone says about that. I do believe that would work. I think it works fine for Age of Sigmar. It's risk versus reward. Do I run this unit this turn or not? Armies like with 40k, you go, I know what's happening. I go, you go, and if I can set it up so you cannot kill my unit, and I know that I guarantee get into your unit next turn, done. And that's guarantees then. You're guaranteeing what's going to happen by going you go, I go, you go, I go. And I think 40k, well, it would definitely be a totally different game if you rolled priority. Totally different game. Because you could never guarantee if you're going to go first in that turn or not. And that's war. War is not you, me, you, me, you, me. There's plenty of things in the game, certainly from Age of Sigmar's perspective, that keep your opponent doing something. You're always rolling for saves, or you're rolling for abilities, or you're rolling battle shock tests. So I don't even think there's the argument anymore of stale downtime for the player if your opponent gets a double turn. Double turns are punishing, but sometimes your opponent can't capitalise enough on a double turn to do anything if you've done the right things. But I do like it if you can just go, here's my unit that's really decent, it goes in. When it becomes, when I played an Age of Sigmar list the other day that had just really good rocket batteries, so they were just really, really good shooting units. And I played one mission where only your heroes could score, and basically the mission was over turn 2 as soon as I just went, I just have to kill 4 models, basically. Now, that is a freak scenario that doesn't come up very often, although that mission I do always play for. I don't even care about your hordes. I don't care about the monsters. I just have to kill your heroes because that's all that can score. The same would apply if you said only like your battle line or troop units could score. Your opponent would gun for those. But it would just be harder because you'd probably have more models. And you would, again, 40k. How different do you think it would be if you said only troops could score and only troops from your main like battalion or whatever could score? You wouldn't see people using units of 10 guardsmen because your opponent could wipe them. You'd see people using bigger units. Alright, you might go back to silly horde army days where they had crazy amounts of bodies on the board, but that's what Sigmar ends up like, and it seems to work. But that was a silly mission and scenario because I could just go, and it almost worked out, providing I wounded, which with enough shots and bonuses to hit, I could get 2 or 3 wounds out of 3 shots per one, and then on average you roll 7 on 2 dice. If I'm rolling 3 dice at d6 damage, and your little character's got 5 wounds, it's dead. You can pretty much say it's dead. As long as I don't roll triple 1, no matter what happens, it's dead. And that was a bit silly because it was just, okay, now the game doesn't matter. And you would just be rolling dice from that point. And the game doesn't matter. Although for me, again, I like that because it's been laid out as, well, there's no need to worry, is there now? You don't have to worry about what's going to happen because you know the outcome of the game. There's no stress, there's no panic on, is this going to happen, is that going to happen? So it swings and roundabouts. It really is, and I would love to do maybe next week's session. I might try and get a couple of the other guys here and just have a bigger discussion on things like that, because I honestly think that there's so much you could talk about with this kind of thing between different games and different people's opinions that I'd love to have a good chat about that. But I've realised now how long we've been going for. We've been going for nearly an hour and a half. So I think for today, guys, that will be our sit-down Sunday. I didn't build any of the miniatures I was supposed to build. So I'll probably have to crack on with that now. But yeah, guys, don't forget, check out Glasshammer Gaming. Check out their website where they've got articles. I really need to stop spinning. Articles, painting videos, battle reports, all that kind of thing. Videos go up on YouTube. But there's also exclusive content for Glasshammer Elite members. You can go to the website and sign up to the Glasshammer Elite, which will give you exclusives, things like up to 30% off Games Workshop product, which is awesome. Extra battle reports, extra content and things like that for people who are signed up there, which you don't get for free. So you can go check that out. Check out our Facebook page. We're always posting up new notifications and things that are happening. Little starting discussions on there about things that are coming up. But otherwise, guys, I will be back next Sunday for another sit-down Sunday. I will try and organise it so that there's maybe 2 or 3 of us just to have a discussion about things. If there's specific stuff you want to hear or talk about or hear us chat about, post them up on the page, post them up on our Facebook page, or in the comments to the video. If you're watching this back on YouTube or something like that, you can just post in the comments and we'll go through those and check. It could be anything, rules disputes, what do we think of certain units, or what about what's your opinion on this, what's your opinion on that, anything like that. Just post it up and we can have a talk about that, and then it's content you guys really want to see, because we're always looking for feedback on what we could do better, or other things you guys would want us to cover. But for today, guys, that is it from me. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks to those in the chat posting up. It's really cool that you guys tune in every week and watch. But aside from that, I will see you guys next week, and take it easy.